I will call the meeting to order. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I am chairing today's panel. With me today are Robert Buss to my far left and Linda McFadden to my immediate left. The assessor today is Jeremy Pohl, and the recording secretary is Kara Belshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The manners for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that the applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. We advise that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value reclassification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. So the first property on today's agenda is 668 Corden, and it's a business appeal. So,
Mr. Assessor, please state your name.
Jeremy Wright.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, for the record, please state your name.
Dave Phillips.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. These are the assessor's briefs for you.
Okay, you can begin.
Business assessment ID number is 1872. This is for 668 Corden. The total annual rental value is for $126,480. The total area of the premises is 8,131 square feet, and the total ARV per square foot is $15.56. As you can see broken up below, we have, I'll give a bit of a background on this. We have a building that has 3 CRUs. There's 2 floors, main floor and second floor, which is 1 CRU. And in the basement, there is, bi-level basement, there is 2 separate CRUs. So as we go through the brief, I'll explain further. This is the original workup we have. There was some contention whether the correct areas were used. I've explored that, and I'll go along as I explain the brief. So if we just turn to the pictures on page 2, here's an exterior photo of the property. As I just explained, you walk up, the main floor, and the second floor above it, there's 1 CRU there. And then when you drop down on the other side, there's a secondary CRU, secondary entrances. So for the bi-level basement, starting on page 3, the entrances on page 4, we can see the space that's in the bi-level basement. There's a boardroom, there's different finishes, there's demising walls, there's separate offices, there's lunchroom, workout room. So we can see it is an office place. We can see that it is finished to that level. We can also see that it is being used as storage. There's quite a bit of boxes, pictures and racking. there is no tenant in it, but it is being used as storage as such. But that is the finish of the basement. So as we go through on page 8, again, more hallways, more boxes being used as storage, ceramic floor tile, wall finishes, ceiling finishes. On the main floor, which is starting on page 9, we see again how it's finished. And on the upper floor, I should say, as we go up, it'll be same finish on the secondary floor. So it is above average for finishing, maybe a bit dated, but it is above average, nice space, nice area. So that is the second and main and second floors in the basement floor. When we get into the area of contention for the areas, I looked at the permit. The permit said 8,721 square feet for gross area. I didn't just go by the number. I actually got out the plans and I broke out the plans and I did a hand calculation myself. All 3 floors are the same for gross floor area. My hand calculations come to 2,893 square feet. All 3 floors added up summates to 8,679 square feet. So I'm about 42 square feet out of what the plans call for. And that's just rounding. I use decimal square feet for calculating that. So that's less than 0.4% difference in area. So we're right exactly where it should be based on the drawing, based on the permits. As we go through, we did receive an INE for this property. I searched the history of this property. They were not compliant for several years. They were compliant for 2017, so no issue there. The INE starts on page 22. The total leasable area put in by the ownership group is 8,131 square feet with the associated costs. It's indicating that it's totally owner occupied. The check box up on the top left-hand corner. So there is no arm's length tenancy in this building. So there is no.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
So
speak up a little, please.
Okay. The INE shows on page 22. I can't believe
It's your fault.
I don't mind. So it's indicating that it's owner occupied at the top left-hand corner. The area of the reported leasable area is 8,131 square feet with the associated costs in the middle column. So there is no rent as is non-arm's length, so we wouldn't be inclusive of that. When we look at the office comparables for OFSs, starts on page 24. We brought in 65 comparables. Total inventory space of 141,000 square feet approximately. The median CRU space is about almost 1,700 square feet. The average rate is $14.06. The weighted average is $13.86, and the median is $13.75. So nice tight average there. Segregate out just the quarterly comparables. We see that the total inventory is about 5,900 square feet with a median CRU of 1,500. The average rental rate is $17.23. The weighted average is $17.79 with a median of $17.50. So you can see that the quarterly comparables that we have is a bit above average for the marketplace. And you would expect that being that it's on a high traffic area. Gordon's a destination kind of street. Also have other comparables on page 6, which is the basement leases. These are basement leases that we have in the marketplace. There are a few because typically basements are not as many rented out individually anyways. When we look at the 17 comparables that we have a total inventory of 29,500 square feet, median CRU of approximately 983 square feet, 983 square feet, with an average rate of $9.43, a weighted average of $10.06, and a median of $9. So on the last page, on page 27, I looked at this property both ways with what gross leasable area is for the building and then the reported leasable area of 8,131 square feet. Marketplace for this main CRU, which is the main floor and second floor, should be around $15 a square foot. I put it in $15 a square foot. The basement bi-level, given that it is a bi-level, it does have nice finish. It is being used as storage, but you do have front access. It's simply being used as storage. No, on the marketplace, it wouldn't be marketed as storage. It's not a storage space. We would put it in a bit above the comparables rather than $10.50. Put it in at $11. So when we run the numbers again, we see that the reviewed assessment should be around $140,580, given the gross leasable area being the total area. If we take it to what was reported at 8,131 square feet, and we do the same scenario, we have a reviewed assessment of $132,060. So either way, when I look at this property, regardless if it's the reported area or the gross area, which it should be the gross area, we have a value that is above what we have under appeal today at $126,480. So given the review, I feel that $126,480 is appropriate. Market rent should be about $15 for your main and above area, $11 for the bi-level basement, and with the numbers adding up, $126,480 is reasonable. I think should be maintained today. With that, I'm open to questions.
Okay, do you have any questions, Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, I've been led to believe that I should be able to speak to the assessor that we've been dealing with on this. I see she's not here today, so. I'm curious, sir, when you value buildings, do you look at what's previously on file for the building?
I always take it, we review what's on file, but this is a field de novo. I check to see what's correct, I check to see what's wrong, if there's any areas I need correction to it. It's my opinion about it when I come in.
So in terms of, did you look at the file for past dealings? You know this went to the board of review for the last assessment.
For the 2020 review, yes.
Okay. And the board of review, what number did they come up with for that year? For
They have a
2000?
reduction.
So to what number though?
We're not dealing with the real team today. I do have it.
No, not the real deal. This exact issue came before the board 2 years ago for the last valuation.
I'm simply dealing with 2020.
Okay. So if I told you the 2018 decision for the board of review was 99,716, you don't even look at that.
I reviewed in full. Every year is de novo, every review is de novo. I don't know what was presented in the last hearing. I don't know if it was correct. As I indicated, I went through all the analysis to ensure that everything was correct. It was kind of review.
Okay, so the fact that it went up 27% in 2 years in terms of from the board's last valuation, that doesn't concern you.
We don't base assessments based on prior assessments.
So you don't look at that.
What I'm telling you is I'm not going to base my market value on a board decision, whether I feel it's correct or incorrect. I reviewed in full, and if there is a board decision that I agree with, I may continue it forward. If I disagree with it, I'll come in with value and I'll state it in law. As I indicated today, the CRU in the basement, both bi-level CRUs are not storage. The pictures clearly show they are not storage. They're simply being used as storage. That's not how it would be marketed.
And what are the occupancy costs that you use?
We're using occupancy cost as stated on the brief. This is for comfortable use. It is a rate that we use for all property. So we don't use the contract.
So which is $2.45 a square foot? Okay. And you make us fill out a form where we send you the actual cost, and they're less than $2.45 a square foot.
That's what
So you ignore what we're legally required to provide you and make up your own number?
No, that's not what we do. We take all the market information we have. We come up with a actual comfortable use cost, which is indicated in the charter. We don't take contract. We don't take individual. We take what the comfortable use, what the market's being reported at. So if you have a property that's a little higher, we're going to put it in at what the comfortable use would be. If it's a little lower, we're still going to put it in at that use. don't see.
Well, the issue for me is last time we were penalized for not submitting those costs. And so this time we submit the costs, you ignore them and insert your own costs.
The cost that you reported on an individual line used for models purposes and also for a field fence. For this particular property, you're a little bit under cost with the market fee. The same way as if your contract rent, if there was a tenant in your building and it was a little bit under market, we would still go with what the market would be. Or even if it would be a little bit above market, we would most likely still go with what market would be. We use that information for our analysis purposes. That's what it's for.
And have you reviewed the comparables that we provided?
Yes, I have.
And you agree that those are good comparables?
No, I did not, and I rebuttal information.
So even though they're on the same street within a couple of blocks of our building, you don't consider them good comparables?
I'll go through the rebuttal time.
Now, previous assessor who had this, Ms. Shabley, is that how you pronounce it? Tab 5 of our brief.
Are you asking questions on my information?
Well, I'm just trying to understand how this process works, because when we appealed this, I didn't know it was you showing up today. When we appealed this, she gave us a definite way of how this had been calculated. And she says, I note the 2020 real property application for revision was based on a leasable area of 8,131 square feet, a rent of $12.15. The leasable area is incorrect, and the business assessment is based on the correct area of 8,721 square feet. The agreed rent of $12.15 plus occupancy cost of $2.45 is applied to the correct area.
Is there a question coming here?
Yeah, because I thought I was going to have the assessor we've been dealing with. Now I've got someone different.
Can I just speak to that point?
Sure, but let me finish the point.
Well, you seem like you're presenting information that's not in my brief, so I can't answer the question.
Yeah, we can't answer questions on your brief.
Okay, well, this is an email from the city. This is their email saying how they came up with this value.
Yeah,
And
you can present that in your brief.
well, I want to ask them why it's changed.
Okay.
If the assessment was based on a leasable area of 8,721 square feet, agreed rent of $12.15 plus occupancy cost of $2.45, correct annual rental value is $126,480. So it was pointed out that
I don't have to
it would be tab 5. And, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
after the pictures.
After the pictures.
Yes, I read through this information. Basically, you're on one dated
June 2024.
the assessor that was going to be assigned to the property is dealing with case management right as we speak. So it was assigned to me so I could be here today. This person that you're dealing with, this is her email, your correspondence back and forth. I reviewed it in full. Like I said, I took this property from a start standpoint and reviewed it in full, both areas. There's no issue here. I presented both workups with the reported leasable areas and with the gross leasable areas.
So that when we were sent this assessment, it was based on 8,721 square feet, rent 1245, occupancy 245 to get 126,480.
As is so.
I just find it very interesting that you've thrown out the numbers that she used, yet it comes out to 126,480, which makes it look like somehow miraculously going from 87.21 to 81.31. It all worked out miraculously to 126,480.
Let me be clear. The number that's under appeal, I'm not asking for an increase, I'm not recommending a reduction. The number under appeal is 126,480. I reviewed this property in full. As you can see, the workup in the back. For both positions, gross leasable area, which is correct, and the reported leasable area, $8,131. I brought in substantial variables to support our $50 rate, which is what I think it should be based on my experience in the marketplace for the above grade CRU for both main and second, and what I feel the lower level should be based on a bi-level rentable series. Those numbers coming in are both above what we have on the roll at 126.40. So after having a full review, independent from anyone else's analysis, I still feel that 126.480 is reasonable. If there's any other further points you would like to make.
Well, I'm also going to ask you, the building is valued by another branch of the city, valuation officer, assessment and taxation. Do you look at those numbers?
Valuation officer.
For property taxes?
For assessment purposes for real property?
Yes.
Yes. I looked at that work up to the 2020. So.
Right. And you know that in that case, the city provided us with a revision offer with overall blended rate of $15 and $6.78. So one branch of the city is saying this is correct, and then a different branch of the city is saying
they're not the same branch. They're not different branches, they're the same branch. Speak the people that signed the 15-1, which I'll get to now. We're not supposed to be speaking to 15-1s in the Board of Vision. This is a settlement issue which was resolved. That's not to be brought before the panel. But having said that, I'll get into it now. The people that you were dealing with for signing this put the bottom space, the lower level spaces in that storage. It's not storage. I reviewed the property in full. I've indicated that it's not storage. I'm not putting the storage rent on. The marketplace wouldn't rent this out as storage, nor would any more property owner. You can see the finished level in the basement. It's not storage, so it's not going to get a storage rate. Even if the primary occupant is owner occupied and simply have to be storing stuff down there because they don't have tenants, it doesn't make it storage. So I reviewed this property in full. Like I said, all matters that I saw coming into the debate. And I feel that this property valued at 126,480 is reasonable based on the work that's provided.
okay.
That's it. Do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Robert, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're using the number 12640 uses the reduced area of 8131, was it?
Yeah, that's what we have on file. Like, I'm not asking for any release. That's what I'm saying. I reviewed it and it's close enough to what it originally was. What we have on the roll is 126,480. And last page of the workup, like I said, I looked at it both ways. First, I checked the areas to make sure the areas were right. The areas were right based on the permit and plans at 8721. And then I run their numbers both ways for $15 for the main and upper, and then $11 for the 2 bi-level series. So either way, those numbers come above what we had on the roll. But I'm not asking for because I feel it's close enough that it's reasonable.
All right. Thank you. So you can proceed with your presentation.
Well, I think we've set our position out in our brief. We came based on the fact that the original assessor had been disputing square footage of what was leasable and what wasn't. I'm told that's not an issue today, although it would appear that once the city reduced the square footage, they then increased the rent, which they had been claiming was payable. I do find it, I suppose as a citizen, somewhat offensive that 2 years ago we appeared before this board and the board assessed me at $100,000, and now 2 years later it's apparently increased 27%, which somewhat defies any sort of economic reality. The building across the street, which is pictured 8671 court, has been vacant for 5 years. I don't think there's an intense demand. The basement we tried to rent for a number of years, couldn't get anyone to rent it at any price. And so to say that it's somehow worth a lot of money and there's some demand for it is disingenuous. If we could rent it out and get the kind of money that is being suggested, we would definitely do so because we could move our files and whatnot to another location. There is no demand for that property. and to arbitrarily assign a value to it when directly across the street, vacant for 5 years. And when we've tried to rent it and haven't been able to, it seems to me a very unrealistic thing. We've also given rents for properties in the vicinity. They don't support the valuations that are being put on by the assessment department. So I find it quite annoying, quite frankly, to be back here 2 years later after having gone through this procedure and having an evaluation of around 100, come back and then say, we're doing you a favor saying 127, it should be 130 something. It just defies logic. It's not consistent with the economic reality. I don't like the fact that we are being told it's being valued in a certain way on a certain basis. Then when we point out that's incorrect, the method on which it's being valued changes by the time we get to the board of review. I don't think that's proper. I also don't think it's proper that we deal with one branch of the city and they agree with us that this is proper numbers, and then another branch of the city a couple of months later comes back and says, no, we're assessing it higher. I agreed to a valuation with the assessor on the other part of the city that I thought was too high just to resolve the matter. And one would think the city might feel bound by that, but they don't. They make you come and go through a hearing, and if you have to pay a lawyer thousands of dollars to come and argue it, that's fine with them. I also find it odd that we provide the actual numbers, and since they don't match up with what the city wants, the city increases the numbers. If you're given an actual number, why would you use an estimate that's higher than the actual number? I don't see how that's fair. I don't see how that makes any sense. So those are the various problems that we have. In my view, we put in what we think an actual value would be, which was 88,270. We had said, based on the agreement we reached with the city and based on actual expenses, that we were prepared to agree to 114,600, which I think is more than reasonable. Yet, you know, we're going through this runaround where we're being told the building somehow is worth 27% more than it was 2 years ago. And I just think it's ridiculous. So ours is there. I think it's more than reasonable. And I guess it will be up to you to decide.
Okay, Mr. Cole, do you have questions?
Yes, I do. You have 3 points here on your page 2. Point 2, I guess, point 2.1. Your leasable area. You're indicating 8,131 is the proper area as far as total leasable area for the building. But you are not including the lower series.
Stairwells?
You're not including the basement floor area. Are you including that?
Yeah.
All right. So
sorry, the net leasable area in the basement is 2,812 square feet.
Right, but you're taking off some
the stairwell.
Right. Okay. So you're taking off. You're not using the gross leasable area for the total.
Just so it's clear, when we bought this building, it was set up as 6 distinct rentable areas. The only floor where the 2 distinct rentable areas will be exist is the basement. We've renovated the main floor, we've renovated the top floor, knocked down the central wall. So there's the main floor and the second floor are one area. The basement remains with a dividing wall down the middle, with separate.
And that's where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
We are in agreement that it is a 3 CRE property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So regardless if it's one occupant for the entire building, which would be the gross leasable area, or there is 3 separate tenants in the building, which would be then 8,131. We're roughly within those 2 numbers, whether you think it's correct at the gross leasable area or the 8131.
The gross floor square footage of the floor plan, I think, is around 8,700 square feet. When I'm renting it and preparing leases, because this used to be, now it's owner occupied. It wasn't. When we bought it, we only occupied 1 floor. The rest was rented out. There were tenants. And so this 8131 is the square footage of what the tenants are getting. The tenants aren't being charged leased footage for stairwells.
No, I hear you. Just making sure the areas as we go first. The actual expenses, which you're getting into. Are you aware of the charter and clause 318.1, which is what I already quoted or got to, which I'll read to you. Annual rental value to include costs of services. For the purpose of this act, the annual rental value of the premises deemed to include costs providing heat and other services necessary for the comfortable use or occupancy of the premise, whether provided by the occupant or registered owner. So what we take there is what a marketplace cost would be, not the actual cost.
Sorry, can you read that to me again? I don't think it says what you think it says.
Do you have a copy of the charter? Have you read it? I'll read it again. Annual rental value includes cost of service, 318.1. For the purposes of this act, the annual rental value of the premise is deemed to include the cost of providing heat and other services necessary for comfortable use of occupancy of the premise, whether provided by the occupant or the registered owner. What we do is we take a marketplace approach to the actual cost, same way we do a marketplace approach to the actual tenancy for contract rent.
That's not what that says.
That's exactly how we apply.
Well, that may be how you interpret it. That's not what that says.
That may be your opinion. You just heard it. You haven't referenced it prior.
I'm just saying. Okay, you read it tonight. That's not what it says.
Fair enough.
It says it can be provided by the occupant or the owner, not made up by the city.
Your comparables. Did you do a recent analysis? When was your analysis done for rent?
I'm guessing 2018.
2000. You're guessing. So did you do it yourself?
It was written by my partner.
So you didn't do it, but your partner did. Okay. So I won't ask you any questions. I'll do the rebuttal.
No, what happened, just so we know, because he wanted to be here, was this was rescheduled because of COVID-19. And they offered us dates, none of which he was available for. We asked if we could be accommodated to a date when he was available, and we were told no. So I'm here, and admittedly, I don't have as much familiarity with it as he would have.
Getting to the next point, you were indicating prior appeals, every hearing is de novo, we're presenting new information here today. The panel has to rule on that information, not prior information that's not being heard today. But getting to that point, are you aware of the prior history yourself? Are you aware that if the basement area was being used and portrayed as storage, and the marketed rent would be a storage, or would it be actual rentable space?
Well, I have the brief that was filed at that time. I suppose I can look at that.
But you haven't looked at it yet.
Well, you asked me a specific question. I did look at it. Although the square footage of the leasable area in the basement is 2,812 square feet, a substantial portion of the basement has substandard ceiling height, is simply unsuitable for leasing. Basement space could not possibly achieve the same as this one. This is in the prior brief. You asked me what position. Page 7.
The one dated November 2017 to November 20, 2017.
I don't have a date on it, but it was with respect to, yeah, in around the 11th day of November 2017, the applicant received a 2018 business notice. Is that the way it starts?
I'm just trying to catch up to where you're reading from. I have
Paragraph 22.
Pardon me?
22. This is for the prior. This is the one filed in 2000.
I'm searching for you. I see a brief submitted for 611 Borden by a different law or a different lawyer.
But in answer to your question, what it said is in the past, the applicant has attempted to lease the space out, but was simply unsuccessful. The majority of the space is used for storage. So that was what was said.
I just don't see another brief here other than the one submitted by Mark Newman for different property.
One, I didn't submit it this time. It's the prior one, 2018.
With that, I can get through the rest of it.
Okay. We'll do questions from the panel first of all. Linda, do you have any questions?
So just so I'm understanding this, what you're requesting today is an adjustment to 114,600?
I would have thought that was, I feel ethically bound to offer that because I agreed to it with the city a couple of months ago on something else.
And what would the overall rent be based on that 116? I don't see you.
Oh, sorry, Arna, it's in our brief how we've done that. Income 98,850. We feel the actual expenses ought to be used, which is 15,750, for a total of $114,600.77.
Okay, okay, thank you. That's all.
Hey, Robert?
How long has the basement been unrented or used as storage?
Well, in fairness, we've tried to do what we can with the basement. Okay, it's probably at this point 50 or 60% storage. We have a kitchen, we have a gym, which we call, which is mostly storage again with a couple of machines in it. But it's been, I'm guessing, 15 years that it's been like that. We've owned the building 30 years, so you'll forgive me, my memory's a little vague.
So have you tried to rent it, like officially advertised at some place recently?
Not recently, no.
Last 10 years or something?
You know what? I don't know that I could give you an honest answer because I don't recall. We had it up for a couple of years and got nothing. So we basically converted it to storage and whatnot, and we use it on that basis. But there's not high demand. As I say, the building directly across the street has been vacant 5 years. They can't rent it to anybody for anything. And it's not like at this moment that there's a great market to be trying to rent it.
So you're using it all yourself, you and your law firm?
Yeah, I would rather rent it out at a good rent because I could easily get cheaper storage somewhere else. But, you know, we can't do it.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have some. Looking at your figures and doing some math, you're saying the rent should be 98,000, 98,850, and I'm working that out based on 8131 comes to 1216, which seems to agree with what Ms. Scheibel said in her email. So that would be an average rent, upper floors and basement.
Yep.
So then the significant issue then is just whether we use actual occupancy costs or the citywide average.
Well, sorry, that's not actually the issue because I would be prepared to agree to the 1216 that Ms. Scheibel used if she used the correct square footage. When we've corrected the square footage, the new assessor has increased the rent to make it match with the number that she initially did. The 98,850 is taken directly off the valuation summary of the city of Winnipeg that we agreed on for the property assessment. That's where the 98,850 in our brief comes from. And that works out to $12.16 a square foot on a blended basis.
Yeah, no, I just want to follow this. Okay, the city is claiming the occupancy costs of 19. Oh, yes, I see. 19,921. Plus 19. So we're using 81, using 1215 on
8131.
yeah, it gives 118, and the city's average gives 118,712.
Right, so the difference between the 118 and the 114, which we're saying is the difference in the estimated cost versus actual cost.
All right. And in terms of business assessment, I mean, it is common practice to use the average, citywide average, with some exceptions if, say, an area isn't air conditioned, or perhaps occasionally in industrial properties, there are unheated spaces and that sort of thing. So it's common practice to use the citywide average. And the individual information goes into producing that citywide average. It's the procedures that are typically done.
That may be practice, is not what that says, but that's okay.
Okay, Linda, you had a follow-up question?
No, actually, that was my follow-up question as well. Thank you.
Okay, and you had some rebuttal?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the.
It's in the folder labeled rebuttal.
So we're gonna get. It's from
As already pointed out by the appellant, that the appellant did not do the analysis, so I'm just going to generally state rather than ask questions, and give me a chance if he feels to reply. Comparable number 1, 698 Gordon. I looked at this property, went through the roll number, or went through the IND that was reported. It's on page 4 and 5. Highlighted in green, which would be the rent that we'd be attributing, pushing the reference date of April 1st, 2018. We have a CRU rented out at $17 a square foot. We have a CRU in 2012 rented out at $15 a square foot, which is approximately 3687 square feet. We then come down to your comparable, which is Mansfield Construction, rented out in June of 2014, $12 a square foot, so quite a bit ways off the reference date. Then we have another comparable in 2014, rented out at $10 a square foot. But even so, with the older contract rent in place, we have an average rent reported for this property at $13.51 a square feet. As well, your comparable Mansfield Construction vacated the property in 2019. So you're indicating that a $10 and $12 market rent is applicable, yet one of the tendencies doesn't occur anymore, and also that these are older rents. And even within the actual building itself, they're achieving $17 and $15.
$13.51 was the average.
Right, but that's
We
included
said-
old rent and one
We
rent
said
that doesn't exist.
We said 50.
So your next comparable at at 698, which was also being leased out the Mansfield space. We have leasing opportunities, as you can see in the following pages, of $15.
What's the date of this then?
This would have been in 2018 when they were marketing the space that would vacate in 2019. So they were already the tendency was coming to an end.
So sorry, they were trying to sell it, rent it?
They were renting and advertising for $15.
They were advertising, okay.
So that's independent from us. That's what it done. So you're comparable at 611 Portage. I'm a little confused here. We have 8,700 square feet, average rent of $11.91 a square foot. But when I go through the property, the ID roll that was submitted for the reference date, we have $15 CRUs, $14 CRUs. We have one at $13.50, 16, one at $11 again in 2016. For the total, including the old rent of $13.28 a square foot. So rents that are closer to the reference date are pushing the $15 and above rent. Yet you're choosing to go with $11.91 a square foot, which is where I was getting at. If you take the average, this must have been from a past appeal or quite a bit away from the reference date, because their average reporting is $13.20 a square foot. So, I know you didn't do the analysis. That's why.
Yeah. We've suggested $15. So if someone else is renting it for 13,
so 897 Corden, $10 and $8 rents. And as we go through the analysis of the property, we have CRUs in place of achieving $16, $15, $17, $16, $17. They're all highlighted for panel review. $17, one low one in 16 at $12, and again another low one in 2013 at $10, and another low one in 2013 at $8. So you see how the lower rent, which is further away from the reference date, is weighing down the actual performance closer to the reference date. The base rent for the building reported is $12.96 a square foot, all contract rent inclusive of that. 725 Corden. I'm not sure where they're getting the $12, the $10, 78 cents, and the $10.70, as this building is completely gross. There is no net rent, as seen on page 26. They're operated as a gross building, so this one I wouldn't be inclusive. And then in the brief as well, they were pointing, the appellant pointed out 671 Corden. That's on page 27. 671 Corden is vacant, but it's a corner store. It's not an office building. Pictures clearly indicate that. This wouldn't be something that should be used for analysis. It's a completely different property type class. So with that, that's the rebuttal information I'll present.
Do you have any response to the rebuttal information?
as someone, I guess, who's in the business, rents fluctuate over time. Some may be higher, some may be lower, some may have leasehold improvements built in. I have no idea whether leasehold improvements are built into any of those leases or not. But what I heard was $11 to $17. We suggested 15, and we suggested a lower rate for the basement space, which is, in our experience, not realistically rentable. But we've attributed a value to it because there is some value in it, and that was agreed upon with the city on the other assessment. And so I don't really disagree with what the assessor is saying. The difference is relatively small. Our numbers work out to what the initial assessor told us, because those are based on what was done by the other branch of the city. And we were prepared to live with that. And we're still prepared to live with it, even though we think it's high. But now we have an assessment that's even higher than what we were prepared to live with.
I just have one question just occurred to me on the interior layout. Is it the basement space accessible in the interior?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's when we were referring to this. Yeah, when the assessor and I were chatting about it, there's a stairwell. And so the discussion is that leasable space or non-leasable space? You come in the outside back door, you go down, there's a stairwell area. There's a doorway to get into one half and a separate doorway to get into the other, because they're designed as separate rental units.
how does the city treat interior corridors, say in an office space?
I'll give you, I happen to sit on the Great West Life municipal building, or I shouldn't say, when the Great West Life, one of the fields when the Great West Life, that was an issue where there's an owner-occupied building, again, massive building, which took out a modified volume approach, which they took out certain common areas, certain vertical penetrations. The reason why they did that is because it's at such a large scale that the marketplace wouldn't bear it, so they took that away. They did that investors group again. So that's pretty much been in place for the larger investment vehicles that are a substantial size. For the lower size properties, 4,000 square feet plain area, 8,000 total, we don't have that issue because the marketplace does bear that. The marketplace will go in and rent out an entire gross leasable area at a certain rate. So when we look at a building like this, if it is owner occupied or it is one tenant, we take the gross leasable area for a building this size. Simply economies of scale, the marketplace will bear it now at a lower level, but at a higher typical all of A or B type building, we have to adjust for it. That's typically what we do. But for in this case here, I explored both options. I reported both areas. And I can get to the rest in summary, but to me, it's not really an issue of area. It's an issue of how the basement area itself, the rental rate being reported on that.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, summation then.
The way I see it, we're asking for our cost, $2.45 as part of the charter, part of the act. Comfortable use. I'm not going to deviate from that. There's the issue of areas, which I've already explored in full on the last page. We just touched on that. So we'll go on again. And then the third point of this appeal is the type of rent that you're putting on the basement area. As brought up, it's been mentioned by the appellant, there was a 15-1 for 2020 for realty. The rate applied for the upper areas was $15. That rent again, I'm applying again. The only difference is that they increased the basement space, the 2 series in the basement. The basement space was never and should never have been valued at storage. It may be used as the occupier, the owner occupier now, storage. But clearly from the pictures, it's not storage. There's finished areas, there's finished ceiling, finished floors, there's demising walls, there's separate offices, there's a boardroom, walk up to the front, good exposure to corridor. That's not storage space. So when we see the rent that was put on the storage space for the 2020 realty, which was I believe $6.78, that's a storage space rent. $5, $7, that's the range for storage space. That's not storage space. What we see here is a marketplace that ranges about weighted average was about $10.50 for storage, for basement areas. But of course, this property here has the benefit of having a walk out a few steps down, mind you, on quarter and good finish. You're going to get a bit above average for basement space for that. So that's why I selected $11 rate, just about 50 cents above market.
Okay, summation.
We've suggested, consistent with what we negotiated with the city, $15 for the first and second floor, $6.78 for the basement. Whether it should be $14.50 for the upper floors and $8 for the basement doesn't really matter. The point is, we agreed on these amounts. I think they're relatively reasonable. I think 15 is high, but I'm prepared to live with that. 678, I don't know whether it's high low because no one's offered me to rent it at any price. So it just seems to me, board having said 99,000 in 2018, I really don't see how this building has gone up 27% in 2 years. And the first assessor says we're prepared to go with a blended rent of 12.12. Then when I show up today, we're not prepared to go with that. We're asking for more. So I think our position is more than reasonable. It's consistent with the materials you've been provided with, and And I don't agree that this magical estimated cost should be used when the actual cost is known. And I think if you read the section, you'll see it says goes with the cost provided. Makes sense to use an estimate if no costs are provided. But if costs are provided, I don't see why you would use an estimate. It doesn't make any sense. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your presentation, Tim. That concludes this property. We'll go on to, we'll take a break. Okay. Next property is 1770 Waverly, unit 900. This is a realty deal. So you can begin, Mr. Paul.
Maybe I'll just swear to you.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do that.
For the record, please state your name. You are the evidence will present today's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I was ahead of my time again. Okay, you can begin, Mr. Paul.
File number is 2028. Roll number is 030929699200 for unit 91717 Waverly. For the 2020 roll, we're recommending that $5,321,000 be maintained. So this is a car dealership, a full service franchise car dealership. It was built in 2005. An addition was put on in 2019. And we have a effective year built in 2012. So we have a total leasable area of 29,000 and total gross leasable area of 29,076 square feet. And again, kind of in vain with what our other argument was in the prior appeal. The leasable area is the gross area as it's 110. We have a photo of the property on page 3. We have a photo of the property on page 3. Please say yes. We're good.
Could you point out which is the new area?
The new area is not reported. We don't have updated photo for it. It's
This is an old photo.
it would have been a 2018 aerial. So, INEs as such, the owner occupied is not an issue. On the permit on page 6, shows what was put on. Winnipeg Honda, they put on a 96 square meter, which would be about 1,033 square feet addition to the front, and a 260 square meter addition, which would be approximately 2,800 square feet. So that permit value for the updating of the property was approximately $3.7 million, which is shown on the bottom of page 6, highlighted in blue. Getting to the valuation of this property, we do not have car dealerships that lease out in the marketplace. There is no arm's length, I should say, leases, actual rents. They're always owner occupied or a partnership of. So there is no rent that we can attribute to from car dealerships to the subject property. So what we do is we go out and we look for similar buildings, similar retail environments, areas, and we take that rent and attribute it back to the subject property. So from page, or on page 7, from comps 1 to 27, we brought in approximately 500,000 square feet of inventory of similar style buildings, slab on grade construction, steel wall, steel roof, minimal build up, large enough land to building ratio where you can have either be customer parking or parking of vehicles for car dealership, for selling, for servicing. The average weight is $18, or the average is $18.86 a square foot. The weighted average is $18.05 a square foot, and the median is $18.29 a square foot. For our workup on the following page, on page 8, for 29,076 square feet, we have an average of $13.70 a 75 cents a square foot put onto the property. The potential gross income is $399,795. With our 2% vacancy, produces an effective gross income of $391,799. Our expenses at 2%. Again, we took out management this cycle at 2%, and a shortfall at $6 gives us a net operating income of $380,474. Capped at 7.15% gives us our $5,321,000. To note, the assessment per square foot is $183 a square foot, taken back to the subject property, to the building size. If we go through the INE, which I kind of briefly touched on, but I'll get on page 12, it is owner occupied. Their costs are being reported on the following page, although I can't read them. I brought this up before the panel before. I do think this is pushing non-compliant, as they're putting in information not on the form that we provided, but they're actually giving us an income statement. And if you look through it, they give everything, like to the point where it's very hard to decipher out what's what. If it's done on an image that I can't blow up, I can't get any clearer. They actually report volume of sales for the actual vehicles and servicing. And I don't think this is necessarily something that they wanted to give out, but this panel deemed that it was not a non-compliant issue prior and denied, so I'm going to not ask for it today. That's why I'm pointing that out to the panel. If we go forward, this is the addition that was put onto the property. There were just two small additions. If we look on page 20, we see the improved sales. These are the 6 most recent sales that we have of car dealerships. They're not all of them are pushing the reference date quite a bit off of it, but this is generally the best information we have for sales. As we can see, sale price per square foot for the first comparable, which was sold in 2017, $3 million, was $313 a square foot. We see comparable number 2, which is 517 Waverly. So in the park, it's $4,095,000, which is $285 a square foot. We have 400 again, 17 Waverly inside the park at 4.2 million, which works out to be $277 a square foot. Again, sold in 2009. This is outside the reference date quite a bit, but again, unit 100, 1770 Waverly, sold in 2013, 9.5 million, a little closer to the reference date, for $225 a square foot. And then we have the last 2 comparables, unit 90 and a different on both park at Point West, being sold in 2005 for $161 a square foot, and a standalone on Regent Avenue being sold in 2017. But there was an established price in 2012. There was an option to purchase at the end of the first term of the lease, and that was sold for $375 a square foot. So even based on a rudimentary direct comparison, which again, populace is what it is, and sales occurred how they happened, at $183 a square foot seems very reasonable for an assessment price. So based on the analysis, I think $5,321,000 is a reasonable assessment, and it should be maintained today.
Okay, questions, Les?
Yeah, just a couple of questions with respect to the area of this building. So the area had changed from 25,056 square feet to 29,076 square feet, roughly 4,028 square feet.
Roughly. I have the one addition was for 1,033 square feet.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the permit on page 6. So it shows the total area that was added was 356 square meters, which translates to almost 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So what added percentage? What was the added square foot percentage to this building?
As far as
How much was that? So 4,000 square feet was, is what
Only
percentage?
4,000 square feet into the original.
Yeah, so what percentage is that?
I didn't do that calculation, I'm not sure. Give me 1 second. Or it wasn't a question I expected to hear, just give me 1 second. Looking at about 15.1% increase.
So then, are you saying, so this is a very small area compared to the entire size of the building. So are you saying that, like the original building was built in 2005?
That's what we have.
And then the addition was added on in 2019. So you're saying the effective age is now 2012? So that increased the age by about 7 years because of this 15%.
No, if you look at the
Increase
actual, if you look at the actual permit, it says they increased the area, but work also includes renovation of the existing building. They actually renovated a portion of the original building and updated it. If you look at the 3.7 million, there's no way that it could be just for the areas that they put on. That would be way too high of a permit value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any questions on
I don't have any questions.
Robert?
Yes. So you're saying did you inspect this property?
No, I don't.
You're saying they added those 2 small additions as well as renovated the existing property.
Yeah, there was a walkthrough of the property, but I didn't particularly do it. I'm just saying for 3.7 million, there's no way that they put on 3,800 square feet approximately.
And did I hear you say that you don't have any comparable rents of car dealerships?
Not franchise, not franchise. Like full service dealerships. No. There are used car dealerships, but they're typically in subpar properties, which would be a comparison to.
And the sales you had, I forget what page they were on here. Oh yeah, I got it. What is the most recent sale?
The most recent sale
2013.
would be December 4th, 2013 for unit 117 of the Waverly. We have 2 standalones on 2537 Pemina and 1496 Regent Avenue, both bought by the same Pattison Group. But that was part of they were the franchisee in place, and they had an option at the end of the term to buy that property, and that price was based in they signed a contract in January of 2012 for both properties, so that price must have been determined in 2011 at some point. So that price would have been determined then, and at the end of that term, they had the option to either walk away or purchase, or the owner of the property didn't have that option. So basically, it was see how well the sales were there. If they wanted to continue on there, they had the option to purchase the property. So I would say there would be more 2012 sales, just they were exercised in 2017. So the most recent one would be 2013 at unit 100.
The 100.
Yes, but like I said, the populace of sales for car dealerships, for full service dealerships are what they are. Like, we don't have a large amount of them, so they're not going to trade. You're not going to get like a dozen sales of a reference cycle where we could reference. So when I said this was a rudimentary kind of example, this is the best sales evidence that we have. And on the following page, on page 21, is just aerial photograph of where they're located. Just a reference.
The subject is in between. And was one of the pictures of the subject, did it include the additions?
No, they didn't. Those were 2018 aerial views. We didn't have updated views for that.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, first of all, on the additions, do you know what they were for? Were they showroom, repair space?
I believe the front one was a showroom and the back one was a work area.
Okay, so you use a blended rate for both?
No, we use one economic rate for all area. We don't have separate.
You don't separate the
No,
showroom?
no, because they don't lease out that way. Like, that's why we go out and we look at the marketplace for retail. We used to have for PCDs, we used to have in that space, but we don't have segregated rates for these. We just have one rent for one tenant. So we take that area and we apply that in a similar fashion.
Okay, now you had a cap rate of 7.15%. Can you point out on your thing where that would fit into?
As far as on our page 10,
Yeah, page 10.
we wouldn't have that as far as car dealerships because again they don't sell. But what we would have as far as the retail, which is what we're comparing it to, it would be strip or neighborhood, or you can also go power center. Because, like I said, some of these are standalones on a strip. Some of these are kind of more busier area, and then some of these are in a power center. But these would be for the retail component. We're taking the retail component and putting it.
So you're saying this is almost like a power center for cars.
In some people, exactly. But what I'm saying is for all car dealerships, they're always in an area which is high traffic flow. They're always in a retail node or environment. You do have standalones, but in this case, the subject property is more in a big box type conglomeration.
Okay, and in terms of those two sales to the Patterson group, would it be fair to say that auto dealerships don't like selling to competitors, and that in this case, the Patterson group might be motivated to buy these two properties that?
I can't get into that. All I can get into is the information I got from the manager of the property, the property manager, the physical property manager who spoke with the automotive end of it. They simply indicated that that's what they felt that was worth. They paid an above market rent in place because I think it shows it here. There's a $25 rent, $24 rent. Above market would be for a number of years because it was their option to walk away or not. And you can see from an owner's perspective, well, is it going to be short-term lease? Is it going to be long-term? Are you going to purchase the property? Aren't you? There's got to be some back end of that would benefit the owner of the property at the time. But as far as them trying to keep a different, if I'm understanding your question correctly, trying to keep a competitor out of that location, I couldn't talk to that. That would speak to the strength of the actual estate.
Okay, thank you. Les, you... And just getting back to the sales for a second. So, am I correct to understand that the sales that are shown on this page are from 2004, 2008, 7, 1999? You don't have any more current sales?
There is none that I can bring in today. There's a few that are post-reference.
I see. And so we don't know whether prices of these dealerships changed, fell, or increased over the years from the early 2000s to the current day.
All I can speak for is the populace of franchise type locations for BCs. It's not like we have 5,000 of them or the number we turn over. We have
so how much?
About 40 something of them. They're not going to turn over. This is the best evidence that we have. General commercial real estate has been going up considerably over the last decade. I wouldn't expect that these dealerships to be trending downward.
But you don't know that for a fact.
Well, these aren't investment type vehicles. They don't now, and that gets to the difficulty of valuing these. We can't really use an income approach, a direct income approach, because they don't rent. They're not an investment type vehicle. We have a municipal board, which is referenced here. The only one we have that indicates where to value them on income. But at that point in time, when that municipal board was decided upon, they were using car dealership leases. I don't think those existed then, and they surely don't exist now for the last 15 plus years that I've looked back. And I don't think there's been an argument presented by any agent that would agree to that. But we're all in the same place where there aren't any. So how do you value them? We're taking the.
So you're obviously placing most of your weight on the income approach, not the.
Yeah, we're taking like I explained.
So there's very little weight on.
This is just a reference to what the actual income approach projected, which was $180 per square foot. When we see 6 sales, which are all higher given various years.
But again, we don't know what happened in the intervening years. I mean, these were sales that occurred years ago. We don't know what happened.
2013 is like 8 years. It's
7, 5. That's 7 and
15.
19.
It's late 2013, so you can say it's 14. It's about 4.5, 5, almost 5 years.
But in short, you're not putting much weight on these sales.
If I would be putting more weight on the asset.
Okay. Thank you.
One last question. Was this the subject of a previous realty appeal, or was there no appeal because of the pending supplemental?
There would have been a prior appeal.
Well, this is a supplemental.
Yeah. But there would have been a prior, right?
Okay, thank you. You can begin, Mr. Secretary.
Sorry, you say
You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be referring to my brief, and in essence, our argument is really with respect to the non-recoverable expenses and the capitalization rate. We're asking, I don't have any arguments, and we're accepting the rental rate of $13.75. We're asking for the non-recoverable expense of 5% to be reinstalled, and that is in line with many of the decisions that this board has made when they reinstalled the non-recoverable expenses. And also with respect to the capitalization rate, we're asking for 7.25.
We just had a brief.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry. May I proceed now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So those are the two arguments that I am presenting. The capitalization rate that we would like to use is 7.25, and this again is consistent with the decisions that have been made by this board. And if we look at the following pages, there have been numerous properties that had been in appeal that are located on Waverly, numerous properties that are alike, and you'll note that the board had changed the assessed value. Part of it was by increasing the cap rate to 7.25%, and that is my argument. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Cohn?
So you don't have any issue with the rent. So you're agreeing to our rent, so there's no rent variables. Okay. As far as the 5% management, whether it's included or not, you're included if we are not. I'd had to go either way. Towards the beginning of the cycle, it was more towards the applicant asking for it, getting it put back in. Me personally, towards the end, it was the opposite, where we were having the 5% more awarded to us, or not included more in our favor. Not going to rehash that.
It's fair to say you've been boarding all over
Mixed, and that's what I was getting at. It was a mixed result, so you guys can make a decision on that. I'm not going to rehash that argument. I'm sure every panel member's heard that multiple times over and over again. So we know that one down pat. You're asking for a capitalization rate increase of
0.10%.
0.10%. But you also had a property that was improved by, and had a capital investment of 3.7 million put into the property.
Well, if you look at some of these properties range in age from, let's say, for example, Unit 400, that's 2007, built in 2007, that's an effective age of 2007. The next one, Unit 500 is 2008. Unit 520 is 2014. And Unit 600 is 2013 effective age. So they're all within that same age, and the board has decided to use a cap rate of 7.25% on buildings that range in age from 2008 to 2014.
So again, no issue there. There seem to be only the 2 points, that 5% of the cap rate. Stepping away from the AIGM approach, or when I brought in a rudimentary direct sale comparison approach, what is the likelihood that a property owner would sell their property for 4.9 million, approximately 4.78 million, when they put in 3.7 million within a short?
Well, as a builder, I know that quite often I put in, when I'm building my show homes, for example, I build it, I put in hundreds of thousands of dollars into finishing my show home, and I don't always get that money back. So.
But you're using that as an investment. You're using that as a marketing for what you're selling.
Well, I guess my point is that the return on the amount that you invest is, sometimes is dubious.
Okay, but all I'm saying is, for this particular case, that's not the same example, because you're using a retail property to market for what you're going to sell to other property owners, what you can do. All the bells and whistles are not.
Well, in this instance, they're using any improvements to market their vehicles.
But so in this case here, you have a commercial property which you just invested 3.7 million in. You're asking for 4.978, or we're saying 5.321. When you've already invested that kind of capital into the subject property, you know that you're not going to have to reinvest for a number of years, for probably a good dozen to 20 years. To change the property in a substantial way. That investment's already been put in the property, so that risk that you have to put into it, you have to reflect it downward instead of going up.
Well, again, that there is the comparison that I mentioned is not that far off from here, because you're, like you said, I invest in a show home to try to sell other homes. Car dealers invest in their dealership to sell vehicles. So I'm not sure that there is a huge difference.
So if they didn't have the $3.7 million renovation, the 2 additions put on, that would provide a better economic utility to the property for selling and for servicing vehicles. Would you be then suggesting that the cap rate be substantially higher than what you're asking for? Would it be around 8?
Well, I'm asking it for the cap rate to be consistent at 7.25 based on decisions made by this board. For these,
how many of these other properties had substantial investment put into them?
I don't know.
That's all special that.
No, I have no further questions.
So a quick thing on the cap rate, you haven't supplied any information on cap rates other than the fact that the board has used 7.25.
That's correct.
Did you inspect this property?
Yes, I drove around it, yes.
Were you?
I didn't go inside the property. There many of these dealerships look alike, or look very similar inside.
You would agree that it would be in nice condition if they put this kind of money into redoing the showroom part and stuff at the back? You would agree it would be in nice condition?
Again, I had not been inside, and I'm sure that it's, they would have put money into improving their showroom. But again, as I said, that's an investment that they would use in order to spike up their sales for automobiles.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Okay, would it be fair to say then that the investment in the property, the return on investment would be generated through increased car sales and increased service?
You know, I don't know much about the industry, but I would think so, yes.
Okay, now cap rate of 7.15 versus 7.25 strikes me that we're splitting a pretty fine hair here where we're kind of out on the limb in terms of no real sales to derive actual cap rates.
Well, you know, again, my point is consistency. You know, and there's a property, as I mentioned, property number 6, which is unit 520. Its effective age is 2014. So whether it's effective age is 2007 or 8 and 2014, it appears that the board has decided that these types of properties should have a cap rate of 7.25%.
Thank you. Submission in the
Retention points.
okay, that's submission.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to a couple of doors down. 17 Waverly. Just wait. Unit 700. Just give me a minute to open it. Okay, has everyone got the appropriate files open?
Just give me 1 minute.
So, Mr. Chairman, there was I sent in an amended
Yes, we
file.
have. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, ready to go?
File number 2027. Roll number is 0309296930. Unit number 71770 Waverly. Roll year is 2020. Assessed value is $9,567,000. Similar main argument will be presented today or for this appeal as was for the last one. There is a property that was built in 2005, had a renovation addition put on in 2019. We have an effective age of 2012. We have a leasable area which matches the gross area of 52,803 square feet. On page 3 is a photograph of the aerial photo of the property where it's located. It's in the Waverly Auto Group. Five, 6, 7 via of what was done, 8, 9 as well. There's 2 additions put onto the property, 10 and 11, 13, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all the way through. You can see the photographs of the property on page 20. On page 21 is the permit. We had an addition put on, which was 849 square meters, which works out to be approximately 9,139 square feet, with a total value of approximately $4.8 million. page 22 is the construction drawings. I brought them in as best I could. These are full-scale drawings, scaled down to a regular size piece of paper, so it doesn't really work so well on it, but it gives you an idea of what was done. There's two additions put on. You can see it or the bottom there. Same comparables that we did on page 24 and 25, or I should say on 24, same comparables, same argument that you heard last appeal for the VCD argument. I won't repeat it. It's there for you to look at as well. We do have another income stream on this property for a vehicle service garage. These are comparables 1 through 33 on page 25. We have 170,000 square feet of inventory. The average rent is $13.95 a square foot. The weighted average is $13.87 a square foot with a median of $12.50 a square foot. So when we get to the actual income streams, which are on pages 26 and 27, for the vehicle service garage, which are the comparables I just did, we have a total area of 26,356 square feet with rents primarily $11.72 a square foot with $15.74 for the 3,600 some odd square feet for the minor area, which produces potential gross income of $323,553. Applied to our 4% gives us an effective gross income of $310,611. And again, our expenses at 2% without the 5% inclusive for management. The shortfall at $4.50 gives us a net operating income of $299,655. We have a capitalization rate of 6.4%, which is then applied to the net operating income, produces $4,682,000. On the following page, page 27, is the car dealership component. We have 26,000 square feet, which is the updated space for 26,477 square feet at $13.86 a square foot, which produces a potential gross income of $366,971. Our vacancy for car dealerships would be 2%, which produces a gross effective gross income of $359,632. Again, expenses at 2% without the 5% management. Shortfall at $6 produces a net operating income of $349,262, and our capitalization rate of 7.15%. Applied to the operating income gives us our $4,885,000. On the following page, we have the summary of the two approaches. The two approaches summated, which works out to be $9,567,000, which again, if we look at it from a rudimentary look for the car dealership sales, we have $181 a square foot approximately. And the sales are what they already went over. And the idea is just to confirm they are owner occupied. There is a non-arm's length lease in place. That would be on page 31.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, the ID is on page 31, which is a non-arm's length lease highlighted in yellow. I guess like landscape-wise, top right-hand corner. And I don't think that's an issue for any under appeal. And then just the same improved sales we already spoke to. And the back few pages are just a continuation of that, which looks like it's their entire business pro forma as well. With that, I think $9,567,000 is realistic. It's appropriate. That
Any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, Linda, any questions?
No question.
Robert?
So there's two buildings on this property? So the $181.08 per square foot, that's the overall for both of them?
So this here is the car dealership. This is the BSG. Page 3. Both are owner occupied. There is no rental place that we can use.
So the building on the right is the, where they do the servicing?
Correct.
And the building on the left is more showroom, et cetera.
I believe there is some servicing on the BCD, but you have a 26,000 square foot building that does collision work right next to it. So I think the majority of it would be done there.
So and what was the permit for?
The permit was for putting on the addition
To the,
of the main BCD, not the BSG.
putting on an addition to the dealership?
To the dealership, yes. And it shows the pictures. So the new space would be starting here, 8 and 9. So they put on some service bays.
So they do service work in the building with the car dealership?
Yeah, but I'm not sure their business. I don't run the day-to-day operations there. What I'm saying is when you have a 26,000 square foot collision center next to you, pretty sure the majority of it will get done there. Some of it, I'm sure, gets done on the BCD end of it as well. You've got a service center put on, you've got a bay put on for that purpose. But, you know, if I'm an operations manager there, majority of it, I would think I'd be sending it.
Were some of the renovations done on the collision center?
No.
No? And you're using a lower cap rate for the collision center than for the car dealership?
Yeah, the risk to that the theory there is no. The reason why we didn't amalgamate it together and make it one use PCD because some property, some of the ways that these are operated, and don't take it from me, they should say the same thing. Wherever there's a BCD, they would usually have a collision center somewhere close to it where they'll send bulk of their work. So we don't take, whether it be on site or on another roll number, we don't take that capitalization rate and then apply it to the offsite ESG. We would take just the dealership that they actually use to sell and apply the capitalization rate to that, whereas the BSG would take a difference in capitalization rate because there is no risk, there's no showroom, there's no marketing area, there's no offices, there's less there. So.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, you asked most of them, but on the collision center, then there seems to be a tendency for the large automotive chains to do all their collision work in one center now. So this is basically doing all the sort of collision work for.
I can speak to how, like I can't speak to how this individual property owner runs their business. I don't know if other car dealerships within this group uses this one vehicle service or if it's solely for the specific BCD on the site. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how, I couldn't tell you.
I'm just thinking of, say, Gauthier and Phillips there, they got the two dealerships and then they got the newer automotive.
And part of it, and in Point West, which is common ownership, except for one dealership, they have an individual BSG within that development. That's just how it's marketed. That's how they do it. They do the same thing on Regent. There's a strip out there where there is one. Everywhere you look, there is somewhere whether it's on site or one or off, or if there's partnerships. Those are things we don't know.
Okay. But compared to the last property, do you know if the last property was just a service area or was service and not collision, or
As far as, no, I don't believe it was collision. There was
just a vehicle maintenance?
yeah, it looked like a service bay was put in towards the back. And then a showroom addition put on as well. But there's a difference between a collision center that can do everything versus just servicing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around if they're combined into one property, one building, basically. You gave it a 7.15 cap rate previously, and this one now, because it's a standalone building, you're saying it should have a lower cap rate?
There, like I said, there is no showroom area, but there's also what we take away is the element that we could put on for risk for an actual dealership. We typically address that at a lower rent, and we address that at a lower cap as well. We don't have the $13 rent.
Sorry, Mr. Foley, you said that there was no showroom in this building that we're talking about?
Well, there's about a 3,600 square foot space going into 22,000 square foot space. So it's
So
not,
there is a bit of a showroom.
There's more.
They sell autos from that building as well.
yeah, but it's not the same as a car dealership where you walk in, it's substantial, right? So you wouldn't see a franchisee having a
Substantial. I mean, I've seen car dealerships that didn't have really a huge amount of space to show the vehicles. Many of the vehehos were parked.
You're
on the
telling
lot.
me newer updated VCs have a showroom area of around 3,500 square feet or less, according to the building, approximately 2,500 or 25,000 to 30,000 square feet. That's typically not.
I've been around.
That's why
dealerships.
they're all putting in new additions so they can sell. So when we getting back to the original question, panel member, that's why we have an $11.72 rent, not a pushing $14 rent as well. We're trying to reflect the risk of the income. But I mean, it's getting hard to say because, like I said, Point West is a good example. Those common ownership throughout every unit in there except for one. They have one collision center where everyone sends these are business practices we don't have information on. So
Okay, thank you.
you can make hypotheses, but I can't say with any definite.
Okay, you can.
Sorry, Mr. Paul, did you say you inspected this particular property or you didn't? So you're not quite sure how much spaces both properties, like the showroom, how much space the showrooms occupy in each of the spaces.
And the pictures alone should indicate.
But there are showrooms, sorry.
There's a substantial amount of showroom, way higher than the proportion that's given to the BSG. You just look through the pictures.
But there are showrooms in both buildings, in short.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is what's on the vehicle service end of it isn't a typical showroom. It's just enough to take customers and sit them down. Like, it's not the same thing if you go through the pictures.
Oh, but you're not an expert when it comes to auto sales, are you? So.
I have yet to sell one. But if you look at just there's way more office showroom area than 3,500 square feet inside the building. I mean, it's quite big. You see the majority of the front of the building, which would be greater than, substantially greater than the space where
You know, I just bought a car a couple of weeks ago, and I visited many showrooms, and I've seen huge showrooms, smaller showrooms. You know, so there's a whole variety of showrooms out there.
Okay, you can begin with your presentation.
So, what I'd like to do is again to refer to the amended workup. There was some confusion on my part regarding the number of buildings on the site, and after Mr. Paul and I discussed this issue, Mr. Paul was able to convince me that there are 2 buildings on site, and so my workup does include both buildings. I have no issue with respect to the area or the rate or the lease rate. Again, so what I did is I blended the 2 buildings into one area, and so just like my previous argument, I've included the 5% non-recoverable expense, and I've asked for the capitalization rate to be 7.25 based on on previous decisions of the board. And that is my argument. Thank you. And again, I've included the decision, the board decisions in this particular brief, and you'll note that a 7.25 cap rate was the cap rate that the board had decided upon.
Questions, Mr. Poe?
Yeah, you pretty much answered everything. The last appeal's almost the same appeal, with the exception that there's a VSG on the property. There's a separate income stream for the VSG on the property. I've noticed that you're blended them together, but by doing that, you're taking on almost $2 more in rent than what we've applied to the VSG portion of 26,356.
Well, I used the average of 1307.
And then the cap rate, which would be 6.4%. So basically, what you're just doing is treating them.
Well, but I actually drove around this property, and I did notice that there were automobiles. Well, there's a showroom in both buildings, and there were automobiles in both buildings. So I consider them to be very similar type of buildings.
Okay. You're treating them as basically one economic unit and not creating two separate income streams.
That's correct.
Okay. When you looked at this property, when you drove by it, did you notice that like we were just speaking to, the showroom area for the car dealership for Honda was greater than the non-franchise?
As I mentioned earlier, yes, I did. But I didn't think of that being very unusual based on my recent experience with car dealerships. I don't know much about the business. I don't know whether it was a decision that was consciously made to have a one larger showroom and one smaller showroom. I don't know, but all I know is that there were two showrooms there. And based on my experience, I mentioned earlier that I walked into various sizes of showrooms.
So again, you're blending the vacancy at 2.94%. It just seems to be a amalgamation of two income streams together. That's all the questions I have.
Questions?
I don't have any further questions.
Robert?
Did you inspect these properties?
I didn't go inside. I drove around them.
So you don't know, in that vehicle service garage, do you know if they're selling used cars? You have an area you said was.
Well, the cars surrounding the building didn't look used to me. They looked, the most current models.
I'm thinking maybe they fix them up, the ones that have been in a collision, they repair them and then sell them in there. Is that possible?
Could be possible.
You think it's fair to put the two buildings together under one cap rate?
Well, maybe, I've been to various of these showrooms in that area, and all of the ones that I visited, of course, were selling new cars. I don't recall whether I was in that. Oh, I wasn't looking for that model of a vehicle, so I don't think I visited that before when I was looking for a vehicle. But as I said, when I drove around, I noticed new vehicles parked around both buildings.
Is that it, Robert?
Yes, that is my question.
Okay. I guess on the board decisions that you've given, did any of them include a standalone unit like this one?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
All right, I have no more questions then, so thank you for that. Let's move on to our last property today on 271 Madison. Got the files open?
Yes.
Right. You can proceed.
File number 2031. Roll number is 070008595500. SIDMIC address is 271 Madison. We have a assessed value of $1,244,000. And it is class code 60. It's not class code 10 at all. I don't know why they came on the brief. Disregard that. That's a typo. We have a building that was built in 1946, had a substantial renovation put into it in 2018. We have an effective year built in 1996. We have gross floor area and leasable area the same, 4680. Again, it's one CRU. We hashed the argument. I'm not going to do it again for as far as vertical penetrations or hallways or such that. When we look at the property here, it was bought in September 2017 for $875,000. It was bought with not to continue forward in its current state. It was going to go for renovation. Prior to this, that must have been this property a dozen years ago. It used to be a sportsman, RV stuff, boat stuff, that kind of thing. I don't know when they shut down. I can't remember. But it has since changed. They basically bought a building and with the intention to renovate the property to what you see is today. So on page 4, as you can see, it is a orthodontics group. Page 4, page 5 shows the exteriors of the property. Page 6, 7 show the interiors of the property. Waiting room, office area, your individual rooms for several patients, your lunchroom on page 8. As you see on page 9, they put in approximately $900,000 to renovate the property, to change it over to what it is today. And it is owner occupied today. There is no rent in place. Prairie Endodontics is in there. So we went out into the marketplace to look for other dentistry groups, other oral surgeons, that kind of thing. We brought in 36 comparables. We have approximately 87,000 square feet of leasable area. The median CRU is 1,500 square feet approximately. The average rate rental rate is $21.42. Weighted average is $20.87, and the median is $22. So based on those comparables, we have for newly open space for 4,680 square feet, $19.21, which produces $89,903 approximately for the potential gross income. This is on page 12, sorry. Applied to the leasable area. The potential rent is then taken away from vacancy at 5.5%, which gives us effective gross income of $84,980. Can't speak today. $84,958. Expenses at 2% with no 5% allowance for management, and a shortfall of $7 gives our net operating income of $81,457. Capped at 6.55%. gives us our 1.244 million rounded. So, given the fact that the property is renovated, it's in brand new condition as far as walking in rentable space. We feel that it would be the $20 rent should be easily attainable in the location. The location is on Madison, which is right in Bull Park, very busy area. You have demographics of the area. You have Bull Park on one side. You have major tenant is Safeway on the other side with strip mall surrounding it. You have Winners. You have large volume of foot traffic, vehicle traffic. This property is well suited to lease out if it were to be leased out. So based on that, I think the rental range at $19 is quite favorable actually, but I'm not going to be asking for an increase. I think to maintain the 1.244 is reasonable.
Yes, thank you. So Mr. Paul, the original age of this building is 1946.
Right.
And the effective age now is 1996.
Right.
So there's a 50-year increase in the age of this building.
The effective age is.
So if we turn to page 9, this is the permit information. So there was 58 square meters added onto the building, or 624 square feet.
Correct.
What percentage of does that of the entire area of the building that does that constitute?
I didn't do the calculation.
What about 14%, 13.4%? So and then what else was done to the building? I see by the permit here that mechanical, electrical work was also done.
Yeah. All of that would have been done to bring it up to code for a building of that size.
What else besides that was done to the
Your
building?
ventilation would have to be done, your electrical work would have to be done, mechanical work would have to be
That's what
Your
it says.
plumbing would have to be done because you have the different workstations for orthodontics. You have to have sinks, you have to have the sterilization equipment, all that stuff would have to.
But this building is sitting on the same foundation as
The core building itself is
the foundation, the walls, the framed walls are still the same.
yeah, no, they did remove the building and build it.
The roof is the same. So can you? I just don't understand how this particular building that was built in 1946 now
Well, say,
could be considered a 1996 building.
If you look at page 4 or 5, you can tell they completely did the exterior. The building envelope has been completely done. You don't need to see a permit to see that. Prior to this was.
I understand, but we're still
I'm trying to answer your question.
Sorry.
For the risk of return of this contract. Okay. So when you look at this property, moving into it, if you're going to purchase this property, you know the building envelope's been done. You can even see the railing up on top where they put a little area to sit on. You see that from the pictures on page 5. All the partitions have been redone. All the ventilation, all the venting, the electrical. You can see the operating rooms.
Sorry, but you're saying we're talking about the permit that was issued.
I'm trying to.
It doesn't talk about anything else other than adding that 58 square meters and working on the mechanical and electrical work. It doesn't say anything about changing partitions. It doesn't say anything about
This place was
anything
a
else.
sports store before. This was a,
So do you have pictures that of this particular building before the
No,
renovations?
just that I was in it. So I used to go there. I hunted fish and stuff.
I still fail to understand how.
So my point is, when you look at the picture work that's been, the work that's been reported in the pictures here, you know that there's permit works to go along with that. You see that this is no longer a sports store. They're not selling bowls. They're not selling equipment of that nature. You can see that if you were to be moving into this property as a purchaser of this property, you would have one CRU property, which is for dentistry, which you wouldn't have to reinvest in any considerable amount of time.
So are you saying cosmetic changes increase or bring up the age of the building to closer to?
When you do this
To
kind of
today's
work,
date?
you have to meet today's code.
Well, we already understand that there was electrical mechanical work done,
So
but
what
other
level-
cosmetic changes
This isn't
would change
cosmetic
the building
changes. They put an operating. Like, you can see that. If
Well,
you're there-
I'm looking at, yeah, when I look at the operating room, I mean, that's equipment that I look at which can be removed when the building is sold.
Yeah, but if you were to be buying this building and change it over to another use, you'd have to reinvest in it. What I'm saying is, as it sits now, you have a office, medical, dentistry building that is not going to need any large investment in, so your capitalization rate would have to be lower. Versus if you move it into a space that is old, outdated, have to invest money to, then your capitalization rate would obviously.
But this is an old building. It was built in 1946.
was. It's no longer
How could you
is.
increase the age by 50 years based on a 13.4% addition and some mechanical and electrical work?
I'm trying to answer this the best way I can,
Okay.
because it's not an old building. It's clearly not an old building. They did the building envelope, they did the roof, they did the mechanical, they did the electrical. They brought everything up to code. They converted the building over from a retail sports store to an office, medical, dentistry building, which is very clearly, like you see most new builds, up to a substantial level. I'm not seeing the risk that if you were to purchase this property, if you were to rent it out to someone for dentistry, that you would have to all of a sudden reinvest more money into basically move in and run your business. So the commercial, or I should say the capital cost that you would have to invest into it to obtaining a tenancy is nil, the way that it sits today.
On page 9 is the actual copy of the permit. So it does indicate in here that there was a area that was added, which is 58 square meters. And then you also mentioned that the cost, renovation cost was $900,000. Where does it say on?
Bottom highlighted.
Sorry?
Bottom highlighted. There may have been a few other small minor permits.
On that page? I don't see that on this page.
Highlighted, well, yours is great on the bottom.
Oh, there. Oh, I see. Gotcha. Sorry.
Can you declare construction value $900,000?
So this building was purchased in 2017 for $875,000, and then let's just 900 plus 900,000. That's what, 1.7 million.
Approximately.
Okay. And you're saying that that $900,000 would increase the value of the building to 1.244 million.
No, I'm not including the capital cost as part of the equation at all. What we're doing is creating an income stream based on what the property sits at today, what it would rent out for, and the appropriate cost that would go for expenses for operating that.
Okay, so
income stream.
when we're looking at
Capped.
okay, so when we're looking at the you just mentioned what it would rent out for, the rental comparisons that you show on page 11, are any of these buildings standalone buildings?
Some of them are, yes.
Which ones, for example?
Lormier is one.
Sorry, which one?
Lormier is one. Emina one. They're both in strip locations. I brought in a large comparison of 36. So
Many of these are in malls, right?
Some of them are strip malls, some are standalone, some of them are medical. So any renter in any one of those locations would be able to rent this.
And any of these buildings located close to the subject property?
As far as Polo Park, do not believe so.
So if we look at Lorimer, let's say comp 17th, we're looking at unit 502 that would indicate to me that's part of the building, right? Unit 502 would be
it's
portion of the
not
building.
building.
So it's a smaller, it would be, what's the size of the building, do you know, on Lorimer, the total size?
3 stories.
It's a 3-story building, so
No,
unit
it's
502 and 410 would be composed of part of the building.
Yeah.
Do you know how many?
One of these tenancies that you see here would easily be able to locate if they're office medical.
But again, they're not located close to the subject property.
I don't believe Polo Park area where it's situated is a low, is a poor area. I don't think I've ever heard that argument as far as,
Well, I'm not necessarily saying, that it's core area. I'm just saying is that you don't have any comparisons that are located close to the subject.
I could bring in dentistry groups in the mall, but you would have the numbers I would have brought in. And it wouldn't be this fair comparison. I'm looking for CRUs that are renting in similar nature to the subject property.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
No question.
I'm aware of the previous controversy when you were building Madison Square Mall there, that the fellow owned the sports shop didn't want to sell. Now he has sold. Okay, you can proceed, Les.
Okay, thank you. So I'd just like to refer to page 2 of my brief. In this particular instance, because I feel that building is old, it's essentially, built in 1946, and some addition was made, some changes are made. It doesn't increase the age of the building by 50 years. In my opinion, that building is might increase the age by maybe about 20, 25 years, not 50 years. And so based on that assertion, I'm asking for the rent lease rate to be $18, and I'm asking for the board to reinstall the 5% non-recoverable expenses. And because of the age of the building, I'm asking for a cap rate of 7.75%. If you look at my cap rate presentation noted on the last 2 pages, for suburban office, the high cap rate for that type of building is 7.25, and also on the last page, I'm looking at for Winnipeg around 7.5%, and I believe this because this is an older building, cap rate should be closer to that range, in that particular range. So in short, because it was built in 1946, don't think 7.75% is a cap rate that should not be considered. Thank you so much. That is my presentation.
Questions, Jeremy?
Sure, I just have a couple. Do you have any market evidence?
No, I don't.
Okay, so as far as that main point, you're putting in the 5% back, so I'm not going to be late for that point. They can make their decision on that. Sorry, the panel can make their decision on that. Your next and only real issue is on your capitalization, right? And cap rate would also indicate, based on what we were already discussing, your effective age of the building. You give your take on it. Did you do an age life workup? Did you actually perform one to see what the actual age would come in at?
I haven't had. No, I haven't. No, I just based on my experience in construction. You can't put lipstick on a pig. That doesn't necessarily mean that a beautiful woman as a result of that lipstick. In my opinion, that building is you're sitting on the same foundation. You have same walls that were erected in 1946. There have been some cosmetic changes to it, yes, but it doesn't change the age of the building that much.
So you believe that the majority of the work done was just cosmetic?
Other than the electrical and the HVAC.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough.
Robert, any questions?
Did you inspect the property?
No, I just drove by it.
You didn't go into them. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
What are you basing your $18 rent on? Which is lower than.
I'm just basing it on more on the fact that it's such an old building.
Right, thank you.
Okay, just one question then. Would you not agree that taking a 1946 building and raising it to the current building code could involve substantial modifications to electrical, plumbing, and that sort of thing. And would not a person be willing to pay, another buyer willing to pay more for a building that's had that done as opposed to not having it done?
I don't disagree with that, updating the electrical and HVAC system does increase the value of a property. But nobody's gonna avoid the fact that this property was built in 1946, sitting on the same foundation. I have a building, for example, that was built in the late 1930s and had a stone foundation, for example. I'm not sure what kind of foundation it has, but much of the construction that occurred in those days was built on a stone type of foundation.
Okay, but you don't know what type of foundation is?
I haven't seen the foundation, but I'm just saying is buildings built in that era normally were built on that type of foundation.
Okay. Thank you. I have no more questions. Summation?
Just a quick summation. If you turn to my page 4, they had a permit of $900,000 worth of work. I brought in a single permit. There was obviously there were secondary permits that I'm not going to bring in every little one. That was the major principal development of the property. From just a simplistic look, you can tell the building envelope's been completely done. You can tell there's new windows. You can tell there's new walk-up. You can tell there's new concrete putting up to the building. When you go through the building itself, you can tell it was a sports store prior. You can tell now that it is an updated, modern office medical building, which caters to dentistry. As you go through the building, you see the recessed lighting, you see the electrical, you see that everything would have to been done in order to gain occupancy for this use. It's that the building codes have been updated, would have to been. Having said that, if you're going to be purchasing this property, that's no more work needs to be done in a substantial way. If you're going to be purchasing it on the reference date moving forward with a renter in place, that you would just basically be collecting rent, and the only cost would be just your typical maintenance. So that's my submission.
Submission list?
Yeah, again, based on my experience, you could quite often you could put in, whatever amount of money you have, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the building will increase in value by that much. So in this case, if they put in $900,000, that doesn't mean this particular building will go up in value by $900,000. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentations. We will get back to you in due course.
Thank you.
And that concludes today's hearing.